Hello everybody, Crazy Up Girl / Quiet Kitties here, always having an identity crisis. Today I am making a video on KiraKira Precure Ella mode. God, this intro took me so long to record. Anyways, KiraKira Precure is a really cute anime. It's about cooking. Like, this season is really cute and really fun. It does have its issues where there's a lot of times where like stuff can get like really boring, and I'd much rather go to the end than actually like watch the whole thing. The endings are really good for this show, if I'm gonna be honest. That's what the whole drawing is actually inspired off of. There are also a bunch of like really good characters that I like, but then there are also like some of the main characters are like, I don't know, they don't feel as important, or I guess not that they don't feel as important, they just don't feel as like interesting or cool to talk about. But there's a lot of good in KiraKira Precure. I know a lot of people like don't really like this season that much and like call it chaos, or not chaos, but a lot of people just like don't like the season for their own respective reasons. I personally like it. It's way better than the newer, in my personal opinion, Delicious Party Precure times 100. This season easily beats it out. I would watch this season 100 times over rewatching Delicious Party. So let's get started. Okay, so the first character I'm starting off with is Usami Ichika, and her cure name is Cure Whip, who is the main character of KiraKira Precure. She is also the pink cure. So she's really cute, she's sweet and cheerful. She's like basically the basic template for a pink cure, or basically a cheerful, happy, clumsy, probably not the smartest character. The main trait for pink cures a lot of times, and also the basic formula for magical girls in general, like Sailor Moon, Cardcaptor Sakura, like all of those characters. She's basically cookie cutter magical girl main character. Nothing wrong with that. She's the person who starts the patissiere in her group. Basically, she owns a business with all of her other friends in the series, which I'm going to talk about later. That's an important thing in the show because they run a patissiere together and it's really cute, and she learns how to cook recipes and all kinds of stuff. There's like a lot of hard work ethic in this show, which I really like. But Ichika has something to her character that attempts to flesh her out, but it doesn't really work very well because of bad execution. Basically, her mom is a doctor and she works abroad, so she has to leave Ichika and her dad at home all the time. And Ichika has mental struggles due to this. There's like a lot of that at the beginning of the show and like maybe one other episode. But then the only time where like Ichika is worried about that is an episode about her mom. There's like no other time where she's affected by her mom not being there, which is the big problem with that whole arc. I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to make her character a lot more well-rounded, but then it just like didn't work out because they didn't flesh it out properly. I think the rest of her character is really cute, and a lot of it is just very similar to other pink leads. So she's like my second least favorite character of this show. And it's not because she's a bad character. It's just a lot of her, like, they just didn't flesh her out properly. A lot of people call Ichika a Mary Sue. Personally, I wouldn't, and that's all on my merits. There's like a whole complicated thing in my head, and I can't quite figure it out how to say it. But in my mind, she isn't a Mary Sue. I feel like there's more characters out there that could be Mary Sues than Ichika, but that's up to my personal opinion. You might think she's a Mary Sue. Me personally, I feel like there's different characters in Precure that can for sure be counted as Mary Sues in my book. But I like Ichika. She's very sweet. She's just like one of those characters that like are nice, but they're kind of whatever because there's so many happy, cheerful girls in Precure that stand out past her, and I just feel like she's not as unique as she could be for her to really stand out in this show. One thing I want to do before I move on to the next character is talk about her powers. So her powers are basically whipped cream. Her name is Cure Whip. She has like a strawberry motif on her outfit. One thing I love about KiraKira Precure is how unique the outfits are for Precure, and like the designs in KiraKira in general, they're like super puffy, and it's really hard to like draw all that on this image. But I wanted to say that one thing I absolutely love about the finishers about this show at the beginning is that there are no pre-made cutscenes, no repeat attacks like that. Yeah, they come back later, but then at the beginning of the show, they just like attack them whatever monster things and they get purified or whatever happens to them. They don't have to use a whole reused clip finisher they just used their powers. And I like that a lot. I wish they kept that in the show because I really enjoyed that about the first half of KiraKira Precure. But Cure Whip was the start of all of that because she's the first one who defeated a villain in this show. That's one thing I really like. Okay, so the next character I'm going to be talking about is Arisugawa Himari. She's also known as Cure Custard. Himari is this really cute, shy girl that absolutely loves cooking, but the way she loves cooking is a bit different from Ichika, where Ichika just like loves like cooking whatever. Himari is more interested in like the science aspect of cooking. Himari's like backstory is that whenever she was little, she would always like ramble on about like cooking and the science of it, and a lot of the little kids didn't really like that. They didn't really care and they didn't understand what she was talking about, so it kind of made her shy and reserved. It made her not want to necessarily speak out her opinion about things, but like you can really tell whenever she's really into something, she will absolutely talk about it a lot. And whenever she meets her friend group with Ichika and all the other girls get into the group, Himari ends up getting called the sweets doctor because everybody knows her as the sciencey cook. And it's really cute. I like her a lot. And as you progress throughout the story, she gets more involved in scientific cooking. And it's just enjoyable to see it. I really like her character. She's probably like one of my favorite characters in this show. I like a lot of the characters in KiraKira actually. But like she's one of the best characters in this show in my opinion, because I absolutely love the way they display her interests and her behaviors whenever it comes to cooking. It's just really nice to see in comparison like to Ichika, where Ichika, they tried to make a fulfilling backstory but it just didn't work out because they didn't express it enough. I feel like with Himari, they expressed it enough to the point where it worked really well for her story and really well for the plot in general of KiraKira. One of Himari's biggest inspirations was this book that she had whenever she was young, who's kind of a mentor for her and her inspiration. I kind of just wanted to mention that because that's like a really important aspect of her character that like ends up, you know, helping her out with her scientific discoveries and stuff. And she ends up being the author too. So it's like really cute to see. Himari's cure form, Cure Custard, is squirrel themed, which is really cute, and it fits her personality, and her food theme is Japanese pudding. Cure Custard's powers are custard, as it is in her name, and she uses this custard to like grab people, kind of like how Cure Whip has whipped cream to like grab people and like attack with whipped cream or whatever. Yeah, those are her powers. One thing I want to mention before I move on to the next character is that I absolutely love how they handled like Himari's shyness, because I feel like in Precure, when it comes to shy characters, they have a bad habit of like doing the same thing over and over again, where they're like, oh, I'm shy. It's fine being shy without having like a particular reason. That's super common in Precure, where the characters are just shy because they're shy. So I really like it that they really made a good reason as to why she's shy. Not that there shouldn't be characters that are just like shy by default. It's just nice to see something different. I actually love how Himari is one of those smart Precure characters that aren't like repetitive and boring, because I feel like a lot of Precure smart characters end up becoming a doctor or something of that sort just because they're smart, and they don't really dwell as deep to like the type of intelligence or the type of like work they want to necessarily do other than like being in the medical field. Just because they're smart, they don't really dwell into what do I like seriously want to do. There's like a few Kiras where I can say they do that, but I feel like she's one of the better executed smart Precure characters. I feel like the other best Precure character with a display of intelligence like this that is really deeply thought of is probably Cure Beauty, but like a lot of times they just smack on, you're a doctor. And I also like that they didn't make the blue Cure the super smart one. Yeah, the next blue Cure is still as smart, not in the type of way that necessarily affects her arc, which is the next character I'm talking about. But for Himari, I just that they didn't just pin all the smart stuff on the blue Cure and made the blue Cure be a doctor, and instead gave it to a yellow Cure and made her do something also scientific and something that requires a lot of intelligence to do that wasn't being a doctor. So the next character I'm talking about is Tatagami Aoi, and she is also known as Cure Gelato. She is super spunky, and she's like the rock star girl of the team, and I really like her a lot. I don't know, I just like characters that are like out there and like don't conform to what people want exactly. So basically Ali's background is that she's basically rich and her family wants her to conform to being like classy and super girly, and she absolutely hates this. She doesn't like any of it. She wants to be a rock star just like her idol. I don't know, I like how Aoi just like absolutely refuses to be all classy, and like no matter what, one of her like butler whatever family guy, I can't really remember his name, but he's like, yeah, you need to like not do this, and she's like, I don't care, I'm gonna do what I want. And you know what, I like that a lot. Like just seeing her trying to escape her background is really nice, and I absolutely love how whenever her family tries to like stop her from doing her dreams of being a rock star because they want her to be all prestigious and all of that, she just absolutely refuses. I love that a lot, and also I love how hard she works to keep her band working hard and keep her band going. She's like the lead singer of it, and she makes it her goal to be just like her idol, and you can tell that she absolutely loves what she's doing, and I just really like that they did that with her character. And I feel like, I don't know, I just like really like the characters in KiraKira because I feel like a lot of them just have something to them that makes me feel like I understand their drive, I understand their purpose. Aoi is also really good friends with Himari and Ichika, and I absolutely love seeing that. A lot of like the younger characters stick together, and like the two older girls I'm about to get onto, they stick together a lot. I absolutely love how she bonds with characters. But one thing I will say generally about KiraKira before I start moving on to Kira Gelato's like outfit or whatever is that a lot of the older characters and the younger characters, you don't really feel like they interact as much as you would want them to, and they don't really feel as like talkative to each other, which I don't know, sometimes Precure series can fall into that where like only a few certain characters will like interact at a time and they won't really talk to other characters, but I feel like that's a very common thing. Yeah, but you can tell a lot in this show. Kira Gelato's powers are basically ice, which is typical for a blue Kira, but in this case I feel like it's a lot better because at least she has like a cool ice cream theme and her outfit looks dope. She gives me different vibes. Even though she's like another ice blue Kira, it doesn't feel like as annoying as it could be, and she basically uses ice to like beat stuff up, and she's like the first character that actually like lands a punch in this show, which KiraKira, if there's like a punch, that never happens. Fighting for real in this show isn't really a thing. I absolutely love that the ice appears on her fist so she can absolutely beat the crap out of the villains, which I enjoy a lot. Also, her design is based off a lion. So we have like 2 cat girls on the team. I haven't gotten to the other one, but there are 2 cat girls on this team, but she's lion themed and like she's like the king lion. So like I love the outfit design because like it suits her personality where she's like, I'm gonna be like the top rocker or whatever. So I'm basically the queen of this world, and I just love it a lot. Like I just love her vibes. I'm just gonna say it like over and over again that I love her vibes if I'm gonna be completely honest, and I think that's gonna be for like the rest of my life. So yeah. I also want to talk about her intelligence, kind of like how I talked about Himari. She's like one of the few spunky characters in Precure that are actually smart, and I don't know, that's like a rarity. And you know how I talked about Himari and how she's like super smart and like a different kind of way. I'm just happy that they made her smart and like still spunky as a character, because I usually feel like if they have one trait or the other, they're gonna erase either the smart part of it or the spunky part, and I just like that they kept that on her. She doesn't really use this intelligence for her goals or whatever, but it just like emphasizes her character as being rich and all of that. So yeah. The next character I'm going to talk about is Kotosume Yukari, or Kira Macaron. She is literally my favorite character in this whole show. She is absolutely a girl boss, slay queen. I don't know, every single word you could think of as period. Basically, Yukari is 17 in comparison to the 3 other girls I just talked about that are like 14 or 13. I'm pretty sure they're all 14, but she's one of the older girls in this series, and it's really nice whenever you have like these like older girls, because like the way they behave is a lot different. You know, a lot of older kids are just mature in general, but then her personality, like the maturity of her personality is also like added onto with how everybody basically like admires her. She has like a whole fan club dedicated to her because like she's so pretty and she's perfect. And after a while she starts to like basically question what she really wants to do and like what's her purpose, because she gets like everything she wants. She gets like whatever she wants because she's like good at everything, and it just makes her not feel amused in life anymore. Whenever she meets Ichika, she's so energetic and like, you know, so out there. Like she gets amused for like probably the first time in a while. She's like, wow, this is actually pretty fun. So a lot of times like in her life, since like she's had this superior treatment, she just has no fun in her life. So being a part of the KiraKira girls Precure team was just a big joy for her, and it made her feel a lot more convicted within her life. Yukari is also a very intelligent person. I already said that Himawari was very smart, but the way Yukari displays her intelligence is very different. It isn't like a display of science, it's just a display of logic, basic logic that in a lot of like shows like this they don't really follow. The characters will like fall for like a character disguised in a little mask and just won't notice stuff. Yukari's that person that like actually catches on to stuff and will actually go through with the plan to like prevent or stop something from happening, because like she's the only like logical, other than probably the next character I'm gonna talk about, but she's like one of those characters that are like, I can see through you, and she's like very observative is how I would describe her. Like I just really love that they put that much detail into her character. I think a lot of people think that Yukari is their favorite character from this season. She's just a standout. She's really cool, and not only that, like she's just like, her attitude is also really cool, and I don't know, it's like her voice, like she's always like, she's very like she's a mysterious character. Like the way she speaks is also just, you never know what's on her mind. Like I just like characters like that because you never know what's gonna happen with them. You never know how they're gonna react. And she also like teases others, and not in like a mean kind of way, but like she just wants to see different people's reactions to stuff. Basically she just like wants anything that can like amuse her, because her like normal life is just so unamusing where people just idolize her. Okay, so more on to Cure Macaron. She is obviously a macaron themed cure, and her theme is also being a cat. Just like how Aoi is aligned, we have two cats on the team. Like I mentioned earlier, she is the other cat girl. Her attacks also consist of like macaron cream, and like she uses it to like create strings, but then there's like two huge macarons at the end of it, and she kind of just like slings it at opponents and like changes its shape. It's very similar to the other girls' attacks, but then I'm not gonna lie, I like this weapon a lot. It's really cute and it looks dope. I'm not gonna lie. I just like this character so much because you never know what's going on. Also, her fighting is like, it's very cat-like. I like that they put that into her fighting. I absolutely love the motifs in this season. It's really good. Yeah, I think that's what I have to say. So the fifth character I'm talking about is Kenjo Akira, and she is also known as Cured Chocolate. I really like her. She's also very mature, just like Yukari. They're actually really close, so close I think they should be a couple. Yeah, so she's really calm. She's also very sweet as a character. She has a little sister that she like really cares about. Her little sister basically has an illness, and Akira is always willing to bend down and to help out with her little sister. It's just really nice to see how caring she is as a character. I also like how she interacts with the girls. She's just a very good figure to look up to in general. Like if you watch the show for yourself, like my explanation doesn't necessarily like give it justice, because I don't know, like if you just saw it for yourself and saw how much she cared about people, it would just be a lot more than what I'm talking about her. So yeah, she's also like really close to Yukari. Basically, like how I mentioned a few seconds ago that she's so close they should be a couple. Like the show literally teases it non-stop. Like no joke, they should really be a couple. Why are they not a couple at the end? I can't possibly understand. I just like Akira a lot. She's so sweet. Akira's theme is also being a dog other than chocolate, which is obviously in her name. And a lot of that dog kind of shows in her normal personality, where she's very loyal and gentle and sweet and kind in that kind of way. I also completely forgot to mention that Akira is a tomboy. Yeah, I don't know, I love tomboys. But at the start of the series, Ichika basically, they're next door neighbors. This is basically how she got introduced into the story. And Ichika literally thinks that Akira is a boy until she finds out, oh, I made a mistake. Akira isn't a boy. And you know what? This has happened in Precure before. 1, 2, 3. Spoiler. Heart catch Precure. Anyways, this has happened before where people just like think they're boys, and yeah. But Akira isn't a boy. She's just a tomboy. I like her a lot. I mean a lot. I'm just gonna repeat that over and over again. Like, she's like one of my favorite characters in this series, actually. Like, my explanation, I just don't think it will do it justice. You have to see it for yourself, in my personal opinion. I know a lot of people don't really care for Akira, but you know what? I do. I also completely forgot to mention that Akira doesn't live with her family. She decided to move with her grandparents, basically, to go to school and probably for the better of her sister. Yeah, so I just forgot to mention that. Now on to the next character. Okay, so the next character I'm going to be talking about is Karahoshi Ciel. Saying her name is very difficult, especially her last name. But Ciel is basically this famous French patissiere, but she's not really French. She's actually from the kingdom where all the other fairies come from, you know, basically the mascots of the show. I'm gonna get into them after this, but she's one of them basically. She comes from there, and she went with her twin brother who is also a fairy. And she ended up getting very successful at her job being a patissiere by herself pretty much. And yeah, she's super famous in Paris and everywhere in general. She has cooking shows. And Ichika is like, she's a super fan. It's kind of like Mana and Doki Doki Precure. But yeah, she's like a super fan of Ciel. And basically, Ciel ends up coming over to the town where the girls work, and they end up being her. Ichika has like a fangirl moment, you know, and we get to know her quite a bit. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, she's like the least interesting character. I think out of all of the main characters, even her brother is more interesting than her. If I'm gonna be honest, even though she has like an interesting backstory, it just kind of feels like she's sassy and like not like too sassy. She's a nice person and she's very confident. But she's very, I don't know, just not that interesting in my personal opinion. Even though I still like her, like I heard some people don't like her. I don't really see it, me personally, but she's not that interesting. She's kind of like in line with Ichika, where they have like an interesting backstory, but it doesn't necessarily make their narrative feel better. That's how I would describe her. Ciel is our mid-season cure, and her name is Cure Parfait. And also, she is unicorn themed with rainbow attacks, which I feel like it's like a little bit off-putting, because I feel like the rainbow part, even though it's like a part of the parfait or whatever, it just feels so random, because the other girls have like all these food weapons and she just has a rainbow weapon. It feels random, but I guess it goes with the unicorn and parfait motif. Yeah, her design is actually really cute. I like her design a lot. She's like, I don't know, her design is pretty good. Her fighting is fine, I guess. I don't know, I feel like in general in this season the fighting isn't that notable. A lot of people like to say Mahotsukai Precure is like not notable in fighting, but there are some episodes I can remember for their fighting and really good animation. In KiraKira, I cannot think of an example. I'm gonna be completely honest. None of the attacks were amazing. None of the special attacks were great. Some of the outfits, they looked nice, but like none of the fighting was good. Cure Parfait and Ciel, they're okay character. She's just not that interesting in my opinion. Even though like Ichika, you could say, yeah, her story wasn't really executed the best. Like, I don't know, CL, like they're like pretty much, I feel like, in the same tier. Maybe CL is like slightly worse. I don't know. I wouldn't call her character bad. It's just I felt like she didn't have much, and her brother like executed everything way better than she did. I would much rather have him as a mid-season cure. I'm gonna be completely honest. Don't worry, I'm gonna get to him and he's gonna be awesome. The next character I'm going to be talking about is called Pecodine. She is a fairy, basically a simple fairy as I would describe it. She's very excitable is how I would describe her, but she's a basic fairy. She's one of those fairies that you can tell they just made for the merch 100%. Now, every Precure fairy is obviously made for merch purposes because they need to sell stuff to the kids. But the thing is that I feel like they usually put them in the plot better. Sometimes there's still a lot of times where they just have fairies because they need a fairy. But like Pecodine, she does have a plot kind of at the end. Not really. She becomes a cure. That's what I would say her plot is. And her name is Cure Donut or Cure Pecodine. Literally the same thing. Her name just means donut. But she's just one of those fairies that you can tell exists mainly for merch purposes and like nothing necessarily outside of it. Yeah, all fairies are made for merch. Once again. But usually there's some like better plot purpose for the fairies. So the next character I'm going to be talking about is named Chochoru. He's an old guy, old character. He's an old fairy. Basically, he's a ghost. He wasn't like that originally, obviously, but he is a ghost. And you know what? That's what I like about him. He's a ghost. He's a little bit different as a fairy mascot. And you can tell he isn't the most heavy marketed mascot like Pecodine. And they can do more with like, even though they don't necessarily do more with him, they don't have to like constantly make him like crazy energy filled. I don't know, like he still obviously is like very interactive, but like he's not as like energetic as Pecodine or a bunch of the other characters. They're able to like kind of tone him down a little bit. Still not really. He's supposed to be funny. He can't touch anything because he's a ghost. That's what I like about him. But like he's okay. I like him a lot. Nothing really that much I can say about him. He doesn't really do much for the plot, I would say. At least not in a very notable way. Now we are starting the villain section of this video, and if I'm gonna be completely honest, it's gonna get confusing because the way the villains work in KiraKira, like there's a whole different set of villains at the start of the show compared to what like the actual villains are for the show. Spoiler alert for another Precure series that is reviewed on my channel. In Mahoskai Precure, there's like a ridiculous amount of villains. Like ridiculous. KiraKira is not like that. There's still quite a bit, but it's not like Mahoskai where I had to go through like some crazy time loops and crazy complicated stuff just to like explain the villains for that series, because like it's just complicated. But for KiraKira, it's not really confusing, if I'm gonna be completely honest. It's very straight down the line. It doesn't get into like confusing mixed territory where it's like too much is like going on and it gets really hard to explain. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that. It's just basic, kind of. It's just a little extra. They added some seasoning. Okay, so the group of villains I am talking about is the KiraKira thieves. And can I explain what KiraKira is? It's basically the energy of the KiraKira Precure world, whatever, what makes people like food. But like I feel like whenever the characters like randomly start chanting KiraKira KiraKira, it's like a cult. And I've always thought about this. I don't think anybody else has said this ever. But if I hear one more time, I'm gonna do something. Like, it's so weird. It's bizarre that they do that in the show. It's so bizarre. Like, it's one of the most bizarre things in the show. It's just strange. Me saying it is strange, but it feels culty. I think everything sounds like a cult. But like, literally, it sounds so culty. It's so weird. I'm so off topic, but I had to say it. Okay, for real. Back to the KiraKira thieves. Okay, so here are all the names for the KiraKira thieves. So we have Gummy, Pulu Pulu, Hodo, I think I said that wrong, Chokria, Maquilone, Bitard, Weirdo, Bonjin, where's it Spongin? I don't know. Kuka Cookie, and Tarton. I'm gonna get clowned for reading out these names. I don't know. Like, I have to look on the wiki for these names because I genuinely can't remember the names of these people because, like, they're only at the start of the show. I'm not gonna lie. They do appear again towards the end of the show, but they're kind of irrelevant for a long time. They're just basic little villains. I think at first when I was watching the show, I literally think I thought they were like the same person until like the second or third episode, and I realized, oh wait, they're different people. That might be wrong. My thoughts might be wrong right now, but I think that's what happened when I was watching the show. They're okay. They all have unique personalities, I'm guessing. I can kind of remember. They're not that relevant. If I'm gonna be honest, they're just like little villains to get rid of for the start of the show. And at the time, during the show, like how I mentioned that the girls for a short amount of time didn't necessarily have pre-recorded finishers, and how they used like random little attacks, or not random little attacks, but like attacks outside of like recorded clips that are reused to defeat them. That's what these villains were kind of used for. I think they might have been also used to kind of display what their powers were. So yeah, I think that might have, maybe that was a reason why these exist. But it's kind of interesting to see them because they weren't like killed off by finishers. Maybe they were towards the end of their time. I can't really remember. But that was like a really short time in. Only 10 episodes. So that was like only 10 episodes. So maybe they had finishers by then. I can't necessarily remember. But for a lot of them, there was no finishers used on them. They just got finished by the girls' basic attacks that weren't pre-recorded. They're fine, I guess. They're not that memorable, if I'm going to be completely honest. I remember them because of the unique aspect of the girls not using finishers. But for anybody else, they're probably not that memorable. Oh yeah, they became good in the end. So they basically got a redemption story. Okay, so now we are getting into an interesting villain. And we are going to be talking about Cure Parfai's brother, or CL's brother. And his name is Ryo Kuraki. It's hard for me to say all these names. So basically, him and CL went to Paris or France. I can't remember. Was it in Paris? I know it was in France. Anyways, okay, so they were basically bakers trying to learn their way up to cooking, and CL could make amazing food. It wouldn't fail. People would like it. But then Ryo had this issue where his food just like, it would not work out. It wouldn't get popular. Like, he would keep messing up his food, and it just nothing was going well for him. So as CL started gaining happiness from all the food she was making and all of her hard work, basically just ended up like not improving his skills. He got tired of it. He was improving, but like he wasn't happy with it. So all of his food started to become gray because, you know, the weird Kiraru energy thing I was talking about earlier. That basically messed up his food. His food turned gray, still like a rock. You can't eat food like that in the show. So yeah, he kind of just quit, and then like he got brainwashed and mind controlled by the villain of the show. Main villain of the show. And he came back as a villain, and he explored Earth for a while, or he lived on Earth before, but like he just explored the girls, where they live and stuff like that, and started fighting them, and he kept losing, obviously. And then CL in her fairy form, she came back around that point, and she was like, oh, like there all the girls were there. They're like, who is this guy? And he was being all suspicious. He came disguised as a middle school boy, which they've done that before in Precure, but yeah, he came disguised as a middle school boy. And basically, my bestie, so my favorite girl, Yukari, came over, and she was like, pause, hold up, I know you are not a normal person. you are on that BS. You are telling lies. And then he was like, oh no, you discovered my secret. I'm joking, not really. Anyways, she was like, you're telling lies. And she basically discovered him, which is why I say Yukari is my favorite. Literally, I love Yukari so much. Yukari is my bestie, and I love her so very much. Okay, back on topic, because like I got distracted because my love for Yukari is real. Anyways, basically Rio gets caught, and then a bunch of shenanigans happens where there's like a big fight, and he basically gets like purified, kinda, and he ends up like sacrificing himself for CL, his twin sister. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, he ends up sacrificing himself, and trinkets happen. CL becomes Cure Parfait after that, and then he comes back later on in the show, and helps out. And also in the movie, he becomes a Cure himself, Cure Waffle. I actually haven't watched it yet because I'm not really a Precure movie connoisseur. Maybe I'll get into it one day. I've just watched all the series in every episode. I just haven't been a movie connoisseur yet. But I know that he became Cure Waffle, and you know what? I really believe he should have been beat chasing Cure. Oh my god, Cure Wing, I still love you. First male Cure that is like official. But like, I prefer him because at least he has like more of a drawing story. He at least had like failures and stuff and had to like recover from that. And CL just kind of had an easy path down. Everything kind of just like went her way. And that's kind of boring when it comes to you watching a show. You want to watch characters go through like challenges and stuff. Not that CL has never had a challenge or anything like that. I'm just saying it's like more engaging to watch when there's like more of like a larger standing issue that has to do with the plot of the story that just like really develops a character a lot more. Anyways, Rio is just a very well-rounded character, and we need more people like him in Precure. Of course, we have plenty of people just like him. We could just use more because the more equals the better. He's just a really good character and is a really good display of challenges and overcoming them because he eventually finds his way in cooking sweets. He figures it out. It just takes him a lot of trial and challenge to get through it. And it's just really enjoyable to see a character develop like that. Oh my god, I also completely forgot to mention that his villain name is Julio. I completely forgot to mention that. That's his villain name. I just said his real name, Rio, the whole entire time. I'm just saying that now because I need to say that. I also forgot to mention that Julio has a staff where he gets to take people's KiraKira. I don't know if I'm ever going to say that right. He basically takes their energy and he uses it for experiments. It's kind of like a representation to show that whenever he couldn't cook properly at this time period still, he just took other people's creations and ideas, not technically, but like people's energy as a representation for that to make something of some sort of quality for his monsters of the week. I would describe it like that. The next character I'm going to be talking about is named Biburi, and she's like an old 100+ old lady. She doesn't look like it, but she is. She is very Lolita goth styled in her fashion. I love her so much. Anyways, her story is like the most compelling thing about her because she lived in loneliness. She was a little girl in this other town because of all these bad monsters, usual Precure fashion stuff, where there's like monsters everywhere and destruction. And her town was basically destroyed. She was all alone, just a little girl. And the main villain of the show, who I will be talking about later, basically came up and said, hey, you can join me and you won't be lonely anymore. And she was like, yeah. So then for years, long time, because she's like 100+ now, she basically has worked with him, has done villainous stuff, and now she's attacking the Cures. And basically after a bunch of shenanigans and her kind of like getting to know, and all the other characters basically try to like sympathize and understand her situation. Once she gets defeated, she goes down and lives with the girls and chills around, which is why many people wanted her to be a mid-season Cure. And she feels a lot of anger towards the main villain of the show, obviously, because he manipulated her. And he was the one who caused all the destruction in her life, which is why she was lonely in the first place. So she was very upset about that manipulation after she moved in with the girls and all of that. And going back to people wanting her to be a Cure, that never happened, and instead we got Ciel to be the mid-season Cure. This was a great story to start that off, but I think the only thing that like backed her off from being a Cure is her age. Now we have like 18-year-old Cures or Cures that were born that day that are like obviously not child-sized, but we haven't really we haven't had a 100-year-old Cure like past that, and like unless it's like only in the show form a Cure or if they're older. For example, Cure Flower from Heartcatch Precure. I think that's the only reason why she isn't a Cure, and they probably just weren't planning on it anyways, if I'm gonna be completely honest, which is makes sense to me. I'm not really necessarily wanting her to be a Cure all the time, not really. It would just be cool. I love green Cures. Anyways, her story is just very moving because getting like manipulated like that, having your whole life ruined and having somebody else lie about it and say, oh, I saved you and all of that, and believing that your whole life and just having that flipped upside down is just very moving and impactful. So she's one of the top villains of this show too. Bibbidi and Julio are just the best villains in this show, in my opinion, and I think most people would agree on that, actually. She also has a doll named Eru, which she'd received from the main villain of the show, which is a big prized possession to her because obviously she thought of him as like this hero figure, and her powers are to basically spread rumors about others, kind of like how she got manipulated. The next villain I'm going to be talking about is named Grave, and he is basically one of those strong villains, or like villains that look super strong and muscular, and he was basically this regular businessman on Earth that basically is a jerk to all of his co-workers, and he gets what he wants, and everybody eventually starts to hate him. As a result, the main villain of the show is like, hey, you can come with me, I'll accept you. Then he comes up, he does regular villain stuff. That's the only way to describe him. He isn't that memorable, if I'm gonna be completely honest. He's just one of those villains that are like there. But he's just one of those jerky people. But then he comes back later on in the story, like at the end of the show. His powers are to basically create minions called Nindos, and they basically do all the work for him, just like how regular Precure villains have their own little monsters of the week. But he just has like many of them, which is something that happens in Precure every once in a while in like a few seasons. But they kind of have feelings of their own. But they're fine, I guess. There's also this floaty wolf creature villain called Diablo, and he basically is he's a very big servant for the main villain of the show. He exists for that purpose mainly, but then later on he gets like put into like Graves' car or whatever. He has like a big car or something like that. Like, I don't know. I couldn't even remember this villain existed. If I'm gonna be completely honest right now, this villain, Diablo, is so unmemorable. Like, he just gets absorbed into a big car truck thing. Anyways, he's a ferocious wolf that will do whatever he wants to get whatever he wants, and is loyal to the main villain, a basic villain, I guess. He's okay. It exists. I forgot this villain existed. The next villain is basically the most important one in the show. His name is Alicio. He is the catalyst of the end of the show, and he combines Noir, who is technically the boss of this show and the boss of all the other villains. I haven't revealed his name yet for this purpose. And then he combines Lumiere, who is basically the Cure's form of a god, who is like very sweet, kind, powerful, but then she was taken down a very long time ago, just like how Noir was, which is why all these villains are working up to make Noir get brought back to existence. But then Alicio decides to fuse them, and that ends up creating the whole fight at the end of the show, and a lot of the stuff happens, and it's just a lot going on. So he's the main villain of the show, and he appears at the same time when Grave appears in this show. I didn't put him next to Grave because he has more of an important purpose than Grave does, and the wolf being Diablo. But yeah, that's why I'm putting him here. So the girls at the end of the show end up defeating him, obviously, and he ends up siding with Ichika because they were enemies after all of what he did. But they ended up rekindling their relationship, and now they're good with each other. He also uses cards for his powers to execute everything he does with like the Lumiere and Noir situation. He basically uses his cards for everything, every fight. That's how he functions. Okay, so now I'm going to get into more about Noir and Lumiere, since they're still very important figures in this whole conflict, but they aren't technically main villains or main heroes. They're just important background and important characters that have to do with the end of the story, even though Noir is mentioned a lot. So Noir is basically this selfish villain guy that basically rules over all of his villains and stuff, and he controls them and tells them, hey, you should do this, and only really cares about his own self-interests when it comes to stuff. He despises Lumiere. He is very manipulative, and basically whenever Rio or Picario, CL's twin brother, basically hated his cooking, his sister CL, or also her fairy name Kira, I completely forgot to mention their fairy names, by the way, basically said that he could improve on his skills when it comes to cooking. Noir basically takes advantage of that, and obviously I already talked about the whole situation with Rio and all of his villain stuff, but he causes that. But other than that, he's just one of those villains that stand in the background, and Alessio achieves the rest of the stuff for his arc that kind of needed to happen. He just did more in the past than he did in the present, is what I would say. So Lumiere is basically an ancient Precure, and during her time when she was young and working as a Precure, she owned a patissiere and worked in there. She was also very kind and very generous and did not like selfish things and people being selfish about sweets. Basically the message of Precure in general. She was probably alive around the same time that Biburi was a kid, but that's all I have to say about her. So KiraKira Precure was just a really fun season to watch, but there were like a lot of downfalls and a lot of stuff like that. A lot of the plot, you could tell that it could have been written better, and sometimes I was like waiting for the end, like the end dance sequences for the end of the show, because I'm not gonna lie, they were smacking, but that should never necessarily be a thing with the show. I wouldn't call the show bad. I know a lot of people don't really like this season in particular. I can understand why. Personally, I think it's a fun season to watch, but a lot of the plot going on doesn't really happen a lot, but whenever they have a good plot, it is really good. One thing you will notice with the KiraKira girls is that you'll kind of feel like they don't really all talk to each other. Like they kind of have their own cliques when it comes to this season. Like the three younger girls, Ichika, Aoi, Himawari, they're all kind of in their own clique. And then when it comes to Yukari and Akira, they're kind of clicked up, but then you'll see Ichika with everybody, but then it won't necessarily spread out to all the other girls. And then also when it comes to Ichika and CL, which are supposed to be two really big key characters, because the main character and the mid-season Cure character, they're always supposed to be in the middle and very important. It kind of felt like their stories were kind of just like left in the dust, and they're just not as interesting as the other characters in the show, which is kind of an issue when you have a main character and a super important character in the show and you want them to stand out. Yeah, they should have just had better writing and better execution for their stories. There's just a lot of stuff in this show where you can tell that it could have just been executed better. And like I mentioned, some of the villains, like I would mainly say when it comes to Diablo and Grave, they're just two villains that are very like unimportant feeling, and you don't really feel a connection to them because it feels like they just exist. Precure has had this issue before where some villains are like really boring or uninteresting, but these are two primary examples of villains that are really hard to remember. I couldn't even remember Diablo, like I mentioned. But a lot of the show is still really fun to watch, and there's some really good episodes to watch in this series. I have to say that there's a bunch of good episodes to watch in this series. It's just they could have been done better. And one really key factor I will have to say in this show is that the animation quality is not that good. And I don't mind other fighting styles where they use magic or powers or punching and kicking. I don't mind having different power styles. But if you can't accommodate that with good animation, it's not going to carry through and create a proper impact for the story or create a proper impact for the viewer. So a lot of it is just going to look really bland and boring and not good. All of the finisher sequences don't look that good, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I can't think of a single sequence where I really liked it. Yeah, they would have cool concepts and cool ideas, but they were really long and draggy. Especially the one where they're making that big cake. Like, I don't know, it takes forever for them just to do the attack, and then when they do the attack, it's super underwhelming. And that's what I have to say for a lot of the stuff when it comes to like defeating villains in this show. It just gets very underwhelming, and that's the main thing with this show. There's a bunch of great ideas, great execution for some characters and for some facets of the show, but then when it comes to others, they're just like really not that high quality and are really just, they could have been better. And a lot of people complain about Mahotsukai Precure not having action. I could disagree. Mahotsukai Precure has some really good action scenes that I can remember and that I could never forget. KiraKira has absolutely none. Yeah, they have some really cool like sequences with Akira and Yukari fighting together, but it's not like any cool powerful kicks and punches like Futariwa or any other season that has really good fighting animation. And not every Precure season, especially around this time period, I would say 2017 to 2020, probably 2023, which is right now, especially with Delicious Party, it had better animation for Delicious Party. But like a lot of it has been carrying through where animation hasn't been like a huge staple. And it's like you can really notice it with this season where the animation kind of just takes a back burn when it comes to fighting. I have to put in another exception for Hagato Precure because it was a season full of beautiful animation and great attack sequences. And one episode for Tropical Rouge and a few episodes for Star Twinkle. But if I'm going to be completely honest, a lot of the episodes for Precure in recent history, a lot of it has had different animation where it isn't as high quality, and it's really emphasized in this season. One thing I will say is that I absolutely love the art style. I have nothing against the art style. I'm mainly talking about the battle animations because everything else looks good, but like the battle animations. And one thing I will say about this season is that there's like a lot of boring episodes. And I know that's a thing in Precure where there's like some episodes that are really boring, but like I feel like there's like a really big amount in this season. Okay, thank you so much for watching this video. I have never made like a video this long unless it's a live stream, because those can go on for a while, but I'm talking about like an actual fully edited video. This is really long and I wasn't expecting it to be this long. I actually don't know how it got to be this long. But now I'm going to talk about the drawing. So this drawing came out really well. I feel like it's like very aesthetic looking in my opinion. I really wanted to emphasize the heart shape with Akira and Yukari. I really like what I did with that. I used their arms, like their tails and stuff respectively. And then I also like all the poses. I really wanted this to be inspired by the ending Cooking Showtime for an ending for the show. And even the second ending, because those two things really inspired me for this drawing. I also had a really difficult time with Cure Parfait because I messed up. So the composition for this drawing was really hard to execute because this is my second Precure drawing where I had to put 6 characters and fit them in properly. And if I wanted it to look good, it was going to take a lot of work. But now I think about it, I think the exception to that is Doki Doki because I had to put in 7 characters. But anyways, fitting 6 characters in and try to display the cake I was making for the drawing was very hard, and I basically had to flip her around to the other side and redraw her other half and try to puzzle piece it together. The only way I can describe it as is painful. I never want to do that again, but I probably will have to anyways. But this drawing was very fun to make, and it's another fun challenge for me. I love doing it, and I'm still finishing my tropical roots drawing. It's actually taking me forever, longer than I thought it would be. I've been working on it for like 2 months and I'm still not done, and that's what like breaks. Same thing with this video. This video has taken forever to make, and it's because of the whole editing process. I have to cut down like 24 hours of footage and fit it into this video. It might be longer, it might be shorter, but it's more than 10 hours, I can tell you that right now. It takes forever to edit that down, then recording this and editing this. It's gonna be a great experience, and I'm so excited to upload this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this point, I love the drawing I made, and I love talking about Precure. This is just me rambling whenever I make this whole entire video. Also, don't forget to follow my Instagram, my Twitter. Elon changed it to X for some reason. Weird enough, this video predated by a while for when he was gonna change it to X. I still don't know why Twitter is named X. That's really stupid. And then we also have Reddit. I like to post stuff on Reddit. You can also look at my DeviantArt if you want. I have a bunch of links. I'll put them down in the description. And I will see you next time, guys. Goodbye.